here today for Families Matter, St. Lucie Public Schools Parenting Guide. We are excited to be your hosts. My name is Rebecca Benton. I'm a life skills parent educator with Student Services.
Hi again. I'm Dejon Jackson, Family and Community Outreach Administrator on special assignment for St. Lucie Public Schools. The focus of our show today is to discuss ESE basics.
Oh, we got a good show for you.
Yes, we do.
The purpose of Families Matter, St. Lucie Public Schools Parenting Guide, is to give parents and families information about the resources found within our local community. The resources shared could be in the form of people connected to St. Lucie Public Schools, like school counselors, district support personnel, or educators on your child's campus. Or the resources could be found on our St. Lucie Public School website. And it could be in the form of local community agencies that help your child achieve success. You play a pivotal role in the life of your child and children, and as always, our aim is to support you. Today, our purpose is to give you tools and resources to understand ESE.
We have a wonderful guest with us today. We have Marcy Lucky, our esteemed ESE director here in St. Lucie County, and we are so excited to have her. I've had the privilege of working with her for many years. Marcy, can you share with us your current role in St. Lucie Public Schools and how you support children and families? And then what did you do before being the director of ESE?
Good morning, and thank you all for inviting me today. My role here in St. Lucie County Schools is the Director of ESE Services, which is a kind of short form of being in charge of the different things that go along with our ESE students and programming and all kinds of things. So it's really difficult to narrow it down, but I'm happy to be here.
And what did you do in your previous life where I knew you best?
Well, I have done a number of things in St. Lucie County, from a general education classroom teacher. I've been an ESE specialist. I've had the privilege of being an assistant principal and a principal. That's where we know each other in St. Lucie County Schools. And this is my 23rd year, and I absolutely love St. Lucie County.
Yeah, so I'm so happy to have you here, Marcy. We work on the same floor in the same department, and I love just seeing you in action. And we're going to dive right in. Now, we know we love acronyms in education. We have a lot of alphabet soup. So you said what ESE stands for. Could you say it again for us and tell us and go into detail for our families? What does ESE mean?
ESE is very short for Exceptional Student Education, which you have to say pretty slowly to get it all correct. And what that is in short is it is programming for students that are having some type of difficulty with their school education. So that's what Exceptional Student Education is all about.
Of course. Wonderful. Thank you.
Now, not only students who might have difficulty, there's such a range with ESE. It could be students who are identified as having a disability, or even those who are gifted. And we're going to dive right into that with all of that. So as educators, we often see students who master skills and those who have special learning needs. So for our viewing audience, can you share with us how the ESE evaluation process works? We advise parents that this can be a lengthy process, so we want to break down those steps.
Absolutely. So the process begins with the family and the school coming together to talk about the students' issues, excuse me, in the classroom. Sometimes the teacher is the first to notice those problems. Sometimes the parent is noticing, but that's why we work together, and you'll hear it a lot is team. It's a team decision. Come together to determine what the needs are of the student. That would lead us into kind of an intervention time where we put some things in place to very specific to the student and their difficulties, and see if those interventions that we're carrying out are working. And if they are, then we would continue with those interventions to help the student. But if they're not doing quite what we thought they would, then we would need to come together as a team again.
And like you said, those interventions are so important. I've led those interventions, and it's so great when they are working, but it's also great data points if they're not, to show we've done all of these very targeted academic routines and learning, and we're not seeing progress. So those interventions are so helpful. So what happens after those interventions?
So if the interventions maybe have not been as successful as we thought they would, and a student really does need more, then we would come to the table to look at possible eligibility for an ESE program. There are a number of those programs, which we have 14 identified by the state of Florida. So we would look at whether the student meets the eligibility for a program under the Exceptional Student Education Program.
So again, alphabet soup, you might hear with that problem-solving team, the multi-tiered system of supports which apply those interventions, and with all of that, the team comes together and says, we might take a look at an evaluation. So if an evaluation is the recommended next step, and parents say, you know what, I see what you're seeing, what does the evaluation part look like?
So the evaluation process, again, begins with the team coming together to determine what we are looking for, like specifically. And there are different testings that are ordered to be able to determine the real need of the student besides just the classroom need. So then those evaluations would be carried out by the service provider, and then the team would then come back together to discuss the results of those assessments that have been run.
So is this something that's done over the course of a couple of weeks? What's the timeline usually associated with it?
Well, once you sign consent for the student to have the testing done, it would be a 60-day timeline. It is 60 calendar days, all except for holidays. We don't count those, but it's 60 calendar days to come back together to talk about the results of the evaluations.
And after the school psychologist on the team writes their report, and let's say eligibility is determined, what happens next?
Well, once a student is found eligible for one of the 14 programs that we have, then the team would come together and write and offer an IEP to the parent. And that would give the parent the opportunity to see the kinds of services that the district is proposing to help their student.
And what are some of those ESE programs? Could you name a few for us?
Sure. It could be language impairment, could be speech impairment, could be other health impaired, which means that a student has some type of medical diagnosis that might be affecting them educationally. It could be autism, intellectual disabilities. There are a plethora.
Thank you.
And so once a student is found eligible for one of the ESE programs, what's the next step in the process?
Once the student is found eligible and the team has offered an IEP, then the parent will have a little bit of time to go through that IEP and make sure that those services are what they want for their child. And then the team would meet together again and determine whether the parent is going to accept the services or decline.
So IEP, what is that? And what are some of the components that go along with
So
an
many
IEP?
acronyms.
An IEP is an individualized educational plan, and it really is just that. It doesn't give what we're going to do for the class, it tells us what we're going to do for this particular student.
That's so cute.
And yes, and it has a number of components. It has different goals for the student. It also has different services that might be helpful to the student, as well as different accommodations that the student might need to be successful.
And being that we have that elementary background and that foundation, in those early years, we're seeing the goals that students are meeting or maybe need some adjustments along the way. But after that elementary time frame and moving into the middle time frame, how does that differ? How are the students' needs still supported?
Well, it is very important to capture a life as a whole. And as students are growing, they need goals and different interventions in place for them moving into adulthood. So as students are getting older, starting at age 12, we write a part of the IEP that's called the transition portion, and that is transitioning to adult life, and those are the focuses of the goals and the different things that we have in the IEP.
Wonderful. It's so great that it encompasses
The whole child.
the whole child, and for not just middle school, high school, but even beyond, which is so great. Gives the parents, families a lot of support. So an IEP will include many different components like you've talked about, such as any specialized services and testing accommodations. Can you tell us a little bit more about those?
Sure. Some of the specialized services might be the things that a student really, really needs. It could be language therapy. It could be a particular piece of equipment that a student needs. It might be specialized transportation for students that need assistance on the bus. The list goes on, but those are very special services that are very specific to the student. There might be accommodations which are needed, which maybe student needs a little bit longer to take their tests or needs a little bit longer to do their assignments in class. So there are a number of accommodations, a different type of paper, a different type of pencil, a grip. Those are all accommodations and services that can be put in place.
Yeah.
It's so great how she says very specific to each child. So like you could probably say no to IEPs are alike because it's just based on each individual
Correct.
child. That's wonderful. So using another acronym, we know we love them. OT, which is occupational therapy. We hear that students might need that a lot, but how do they qualify for that within for OT services?
So for occupational therapy, a student would need to be eligible for another disability that is in place. And then the occupational therapy, it could be considered kind of side by side with disability, or it could be considered after a student is already found eligible for a disability. And it looks at fine motor and helping with some of the things that students really need to be successful in school. So writing, that's a good example. An occupational therapist might assist the student with being able to write properly, staying on the lines, making sure that the letters are big enough that we can see them, but not so big that they cover the entire page.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's what occupational therapy does.
Oh, wonderful. And so after that IEP is written, what happens next? What do you suggest parents do?
Well, after the IEP is written, I would suggest that a parent always be present, to be a part of the team, taking that time to really ask all of the questions that they have, and getting those questions answered by the team. Sometimes it takes going home and kind of thinking through and processing through things, and then coming back to the table again if necessary. But my advice to parents is always ask questions, always know that you are an important part of the team.
Absolutely.
And, that we just move forward together.
Wonderful.
That
Great advice.
teaming is so important. And when the parent goes and does the homework and reads through what the team suggests, what would a typical, even though it's not typical for every person because it's going to vary, what does a typical IEP meeting look like? And is there a time frame that parents should expect to be invited to an IEP meeting?
Okay. So an IEP meeting is very individualized, just like the IEP. Some could last an hour, some could last 3 hours. It just depends on what we're discussing. But the team comes together and it's a true conversation about what the student is doing and how they're doing in their education, whether they're meeting their goals or if they are slightly progressing, but something more could be done. So it is a team discussion centered around the student and their needs. And once we're all there together, we're able to ask each other questions. So a parent might be able to assist me with a question that I have. So it truly is a discussion on on the student and their progress.
That's wonderful. How does the IEP cover additional assessment needs? You touched on this a little bit, but could you dive a little deeper for us?
Sure. So additional assessments sometimes might be needed to look at other programs that a student might be eligible for. So initially we may find a student eligible for language impairment, but we may see some other things that point to possibly being a specific learning disability. We would look at those additional assessments, and the parent would come back to the table, and as a team we would discuss that, and we may need to sign a consent to do some more evaluations.
So you mentioned that the student is working toward reaching his or her goals, and with those goals that are either met or not, how are parents informed of the progress of their child with the supports that are put in place?
That's a good question. So with every IEP goal, the progress is measured. It's measured daily, but at the end of every 9 weeks, just like a student receives a report card, they receive kind of what's called a report card for their IEP, and it's called an annual goals progress report. So parents are notified and given evidence of the progress that their students are making towards their goals every 9 weeks.
That's good. So
good to
look
know.
in your report card envelope or look online, because now the information's available. But those reports, are they sent to the parent hard copies, or are they?
Yes.
Okay, both maybe.
Yes,
and
that's
Skyward,
great.
and also that's good.
So we've talked a lot about if a student is found eligible. What happens if they're not found eligible for an ESE program? What are the next steps for parents?
Yes, sometimes that does happen. The student doesn't meet the level of concern. The teacher is always the first person. There could be some things that a student just needs a little more individualized help with, could need a little refresher, could need some more practice in an area. Math is a great example of that. Sometimes students just need a little bit more practice. So those interventions, they could be helpful for the student, even if a student is not found eligible for ESE.
Absolutely.
Parents and families, we want to remind you that we're going over the basics with exceptional student education. And if you have specific questions for your child, please refer to the many school staff members that can support your family and your child in making sure that they're progressing. Marcy, we've talked about notifying parents and we're referring parents back to the schools. Who are some of the educators on campus who can help families navigate these waters?
My number one is always the classroom teacher. But if not the classroom teacher, there are school counselors, there are ESE specialists, even the front office staff can help to get the parent to the correct person for assistance.
Again, it's a team. Everyone on that campus is just working together for your child. And we know that part of that team is the parent, and they play a pivotal role in every aspect of their child's lives. What part does a parent play when it comes to this process?
In the process for eligibility for exceptional student education, the parent is a number of things. Number one, they are a good source of information on the way things are done at home, so that we can measure those things to the way things are happening at school. The parent is crucial in providing information for the school.
Yeah, the parents are the first teachers.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yes.
Yes. So with all of the information, there might be time for a reevaluation. Can you talk with us about what the reevaluation process looks like?
Okay. Once a student is found eligible for ESE services, every 3 years, the IEP team, Individualized Educational Plan team, comes back together to determine whether we have enough information to continue to move forward, or whether we need more information to help drive the decisions and the goals that we're writing. So a student would then, we would open up the reevaluation process to look at possibly other programs that the student might be eligible for, and we would move forward from there. And it's kind of the same process from before, but every 3 years we look at that again.
Yeah, so as kids grow, the changes happen,
Right.
and the needs are
So
met.
you're still covered no matter what. Now, what if a parent who has a child with an IEP has to move schools within the county or out of county or even out of the state? What happens?
The IEP travels with them. Within Florida, it's usually a lot easier, but even if a student moved to California, their IEP is still their individualized educational plan. Once the parent gets to, say, California, they would present that IEP, and then the state would then be looking for whether it's eligibility in that particular county. Or that particular state. Each state has their own set of criteria.
Wonderful. And we've talked about this before, staying organized as a parent. So getting a copy of that IEP.
Absolutely important.
Yeah, before you leave, before you move, keeping that with those progress
Yes.
reports. If you
Yes.
keep it in a file or scan it and keep it electronically, just keeping those important documents all together.
Take a picture with your phone.
Yeah, take a
Yes.
picture.
Yes.
It's just great to have all of those important documents together. Even if you stay at the same school for 13 years, it is just important to have all of that important information right at your fingertips.
Yes.
And honestly, a picture on your phone is great. So many times we've had new parents to come in, and I say to them, "Do you have a copy?" But they have it on their phone.
Which is
It says,
perfect,
just
yeah.
send me the phone copy.
Yeah, perfect.
Yes.
I can get the information I need.
Wonderful. So what happens to a student's IEP when they transition from elementary to middle school to high school? What happens?
So the IEP travels with them. The ESE specialists at the school for each grade level, that's the moving grade level, they prepare the IEP to move to the next level.
Oh, that's
so
wonderful.
the ESE specialist at 5th grade, the students' elementary school would prepare that IEP for middle school. The middle school ESE specialist would prepare that student for high school with their IEP. So it's a moving process, and we try our best to keep it as fluid as possible.
And more teamwork, she mentioned,
Yes.
between different, even all the different schools. So teamwork at the school site, but moving between elementary to middle to high.
This district does collaborate to make sure
Yes.
that the needs are met. Now, do you have any additional tips for parents, because you have covered so much, and I know that as a parent I would want to know this. So what additional tips do you have?
My greatest tip would be remember that we all are a team, and it is going to take all of us in order to be able to assist the students with their needs. So just be open and willing to be a part of the team.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we're in this together. Absolutely. So thank you so much for being with us today, Marcy. You have just shared so much really helpful and a lot of great details with our families, and like we are in this together. So we have gone over a ton in today's show, and families, we hope you learned more about ESE basics. And if you find yourself in need of more help, please reach out. Our aim is to be the guide on the side for the many resources found in our community.
Rebecca, once again, we've
good
had an amazing show. We want to say a very special thank you to our expert, Miss Marcy Lucky. And if you have missed any of our shows, we want you to please tune in to WLX Horizon to watch it, catch up, and feel connected. Check out St. Lucie Public Schools social media outlets for our next show. Next month, we'll be dedicating our show to transitioning to different grades.
Yes. It's gonna be a great show.
It's going to be a great show. Remember, all families matter in St. Lucie Public Schools.